just to kind of set the tone. It is something you would have heard in the final days of Constantinople, which is what the sermon is over. We're going to break the sermon down into 3 parts. We're going to introduce a character who's going to walk us into the setting. We're going to hear part of a sermon that is inspired by the last Easter in Constantinople, and then we're going to tie that into a modern sermon. Introduction, the craftsman. I am no court scholar, nor priest, nor nobleman, only a craftsman of this city, a worker of wood and iron. My hands know the weight of tools better than books, though I have learned enough letters to follow the scriptures and prayers. I have lived my life beneath these walls, in the shadow of domes and towers that have stood longer than any man I have ever known. Now, like all others in Constantinople, I find myself waiting. My work took me this day to the great land walls, the gate they called the Golden Gate. Once the grand entrance of emperors returning in triumph, I have heard the old stories that since I was a boy, how victorious rulers passed through its arches in procession, crowned with glory, the people cheering as an empire stood unshaken. There is no triumph today. The great doors stood closed and reinforced, their aged beauty half hidden behind timber, iron, and hastily set defenses. What was once welcomed victory now braced against destruction. I brought what I could to carry, iron fittings, tools, work pieces meant to strengthen what could still be strengthened, and the soldiers received them with few words. The faces were worn, not from battle, but from waiting. There is a weariness that comes not from action, but from knowing what is coming and being unable to hasten or halt it. When my work was done, I passed within and made my way up along the inner paths of the Theodosian walls. The stones beneath my feet were cold, worn smooth in places by generations long gone. I climbed until I reached the height where the land opens before you, and there I stopped. The wind met me first, carrying the smell of earth and smoke, thick, heavy, foreign to the life within the city, settling at the back of the throat. Then I saw them, the Ottoman army of Mehmed II, the Conqueror, as he would later be known, stretched across the land like a dark sea that had rolled in and would not recede. Fires burned everywhere, thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands, scattered across the field like fallen stars, their smoke rising in slow columns until the horizon dimmed. Between them, men moved without rest. Even at that distance, I could hear them, not their words, but their presence, the low murmur of voices, the ring of metal, the steady rhythmic labor of preparation. So many, more than I had imagined, more than I have ever seen gathered in one place. Among them, something else. At first, I did not understand what I was seeing. It stood apart from the tents, surrounded by constant movement, larger than any cart or siege engine I had known. The shape was strange, unnatural, like the skeleton of some great beast laid upon the earth, not yet alive, yet not wholly lifeless. Men swarmed around it without pause, hauling, lifting, fitting pieces together with grim purpose, as though everything bent toward its completion. I had heard the rumors, a cannon, a great bombard, larger than any before, built to break our legendary walls. But hearing is one thing, seeing is another. As I watched, a kind of silence gathered around it. Not in truth, but in the mind, as if all else had faded beside it. It did not belong to the world I knew, nor to the long history these walls endured. It felt wrong. Standing there with the wind carrying the scent of their fires and the distant sounds of labor, I believed it. I rested my hand against the stone beside me. The wall was thick, far thicker than any man could hope to break with simple tools. Layer upon layer of stone and mortar. Before it lay the moat, long and deep, cut into the earth itself, stretching wide across the approach, near 60 feet from edge to edge, and at least 20 feet deep, deep enough to swallow a man 3 times over. Even dry, it was a wound in the earth that slowed and exposed any who dared across it. Beyond that rose the lower outer wall, the first line of defense, manned until the Romans were forced to fall back. This wall stood some 20 feet high and 6.5 feet thick, giving defenders a commanding vantage. Behind it lay the space where attackers who breached the first line would be trapped, a deadly kill box. From the inner wall above, soldiers could strike from both sides, raining arrows, stone, and fire upon any who dared pass the outer gate. Above it all stood the great inner wall, the true shield of the city, broad and immovable, near 16 feet thick, wide enough in places for a horse and cart to pass along its crown. It towered some 40 feet high. At intervals, every 50 paces or so, rose the towers, massive and watchful, climbing 60 feet or more. From them, defenders saw everything, the fields, the enemy, the tightening siege. And from there, they rained down death. Each tower a fortress upon a fortress, forming a wall not only strong, but vigilant. I have worked with stone enough to know its strength, to understand what it takes to move even a single block. There was no single wall, but a system shaped by men who understood war, time, and endurance. The gates themselves were no less formidable. Great timbers bound in iron, thick enough to withstand both flame and ram alike, built not only to close, but to endure. These walls had turned back the Persians and the Avars, Arabs and Bulgars. They held against the Rus who came by sea, and the Latin crusaders who once sought the city. Even when the city fell in the time of the Fourth Crusade, it was not here, not these land walls, that failed. Not so many years ago, when these Ottomans came with earlier guns, the wall still held. Never broken from this side, not once in over 1,000 years. I pressed my palm more firmly against the stone, as to feel its strength, solid, unmoving, as it has always been. If stone can remember, then this stone remembers victory after victory, siege after siege. Each endured, each survived. Yet as I stood there looking over the vast army, those countless fires, that great cannon of death still being shaped, I felt something I had never felt before. Not fear alone, something heavier. The sense that this moment was not like the others. The wind shifted, carrying more smoke toward the walls. I tasted again, dry, bitter, foreign. It lingered. Behind me, the soldiers moved quietly, boots against stone, the soft clink of armor, low voices. They had seen what I had seen. They understood. No one spoke it aloud. None needed to. At length, I turned and made my way down from the wall, leaving them to their watch. The city felt different. Streets not empty, yet no longer as they once were. People moved with purpose, without ease, with doors opened and closed more quickly, conversations quieter, cut short. Even the animals seemed restless. I passed familiar ways, workshops like my own, where work still continued, hammers striking iron, though less steadily, fires burning, though watched more carefully. Life had not stopped, it had tightened. Near the heart of the city, I passed into the forum of Constantine and slowed. The great column still stands, weathered by wind and years, raised by Constantine the Great when he made this the heart of the world. I looked up, wondering what he would think now, this new Rome that endured over 1,000 years. Would he see strength still, or the narrowing of all that once stretched so far? Would he have known what to do, standing where we now stand? The wind moved swiftly through and softly through the square. People spoke in low voices, or not at all. The weight of the years rested there, not as glory, but memory. I asked my questions aloud. The column gave no answer. My steps carried me onward, drawn by something I could not name, though I knew where I was going, to the Hagia Sophia, for Pascha means Easter. Even before entering, I could smell it, incense, thick and sweet, spilling into the cold night air. It clung to my clothes and I stepped inside. The space was already full, more full than I had ever seen. People pressed shoulder to shoulder, their warmth rising into the vastness above. Above, the dome rises like the sky itself, its gold catching the light of countless candles. Flames flickered so the ceiling seemed to move, as if the heavens themselves are alive. Emperors once stood here believing they ruled the world. Tonight, we stand knowing how little of the world remains to us. Candles burn everywhere. Their glow reflects off of gold and glass and stone, so nothing is still. Faces appear and disappear. Eyes glisten, lips move in prayer. Voices murmur all around. Greek, mostly, but Latin, softer, uncertain. Old arguments fade beneath the dome as the world presses at the gates. The stone beneath my feet, worn by generations beyond counting, Emperors crowned, emperors buried, all gone now. We stand in their place as if the end of a long line. The chanting begins, low, then rising, familiar and steady. Christ is risen from the dead. Christ is risen from the dead. Christ has risen from the dead. The words pass through the crowd, strong and trembling alike. Incense thickens, I taste it, bitter and sweet, mixing with the dryness of fear. No one speaks of it, none need to. It shows how men stand, how breath is held, how eyes drift toward the doors. Movement near the front, the emperor himself, Constantine the 11th, Palaiologos, said to be there, praying as any man must. Time seems slow. Outside the army waits, inside we pray. Standing there, surrounded by the weight of centuries, by the sound of the voice rising into the vastness, by the scent of the incense and the flicker of living light. I find a question pressing itself upon my heart, one I cannot escape. If all this ends, if these walls fall, if the city is taken, if everything we have known is swept away, what remains? The year is 1453, the final Easter sermon of the Roman Empire. Brothers and sisters, children of this city, hear me tonight. Look around you, the great dome above us, the stones beneath our feet, the light of 1,000 candles trembling in the cold night. Listen to your voices mingling with the incense of the air. Even here, I know your hearts are heavy. Outside these walls, tens of thousands wait. Fires burn, drums of war sound. Cannons are built to rend the very stone we trust. You ask, what hope remains? Tonight, I tell you, hope is not found in walls, nor armies, nor banners. It is found in the memory of Rome, the eternal city, whose shadow stretches across centuries and now rests upon Constantinople. Think of Rome, the city of emperors, senators, Christ's first witnesses. It burned under the fury of the Gauls. It was sacked by barbarians, plundered by the Visigoths and Vandals, yet endured. Emperors and citizens trembled, yet the spirit of Rome remained. Rome is not merely stone or street. It is an idea, a faith, a light in the darkness. Rome carried the gospel into the world, and now its daughter, Constantinople, has been carrying that torch into the east. Even if the worst comes, even if the walls fall and the enemies triumph, Rome, through us, through Christ, will not truly die. Look upon these walls, the Theodosian walls, held for centuries, thicker than any hand could pierce, layered with stone and mortar, raised high, defended by generations. They stood against the Persians and the Avars, the Arabs and Bulgars, Rus raiders, Latin crusaders, and even the Ottomans before. These walls are our inheritance, our witness, our defiance. Yet even if they fall, Christ has already risen. He is our immovable fortress, our eternal citadel in Jesus Christ. Tonight, the Virgin Mary will go to those who take their post, carried by the faithful, blessed by our prayers. She walks among the soldiers, her gaze upon them, her presence a shield for the heart. When they clutch their spears, when they brace for the roar of cannon fire, let them remember they are not alone. The Mother of God goes before them. Christ is risen behind her, guiding every heartbeat, every breath, every act of courage. Remember the stories of old. The empire has faced impossible odds before, and God has raised it again and again. Consider Constantine the Great, who lifted the banner of the cross at the Milvian Bridge. In the darkest night, he saw the sign of God in the heavens and led his army to victory. By faith, he reshaped history and brought the light of Christ into the empire. Recall Leo III, who in the time of siege held this city not by sword alone, but by courage and voice, standing upon the walls, preaching hope, strengthening hearts, turning back armies through resolve and prayer. Think of Heracles, marching through the deserts and the mountains, worn and exhausted, all the way to the Persians and back. And yet he returned with the true cross, the cross that Jesus Christ himself was crucified on. Proof that what is lost may be restored through faith and endurance. Consider Basil II, the Bulgar slayer, who mighty in war, yet humble in spirit, who built churches, monasteries, and hospitals, showing that devotion and mercy walk hand in hand with strength. Remember Alexios I, Komnenos, who faced rebellion within and enemies without, yet through wisdom, courage, and faith held the empire together when others thought it broken, setting the foundation for renewal. These are not merely stories. They are proof. Proof that faith endures when hope seems lost, that the city may rise when all seems defeated. And each of these men a reflection of the greatest victory of all, Christ, risen from the dead, undefeated, eternal, unshaken. As Rome has endured trials, Christ endures forever. I see the terror in your eyes, the tremble of your hands. You ask, how can we endure what is coming? Endure not with sword alone, nor walls, nor schemes. Endure with faith. And Christ walked into death and emerged victorious. If he has done this, no siege, no cannon, no army, however great, can separate you from his love. The city may fall, the empire may crumble. Christ's life cannot be extinguished. When you leave this place, carry the truth into every street, tower, gate, home, and heart. Christ is risen, risen for the soldier on the wall, the mother clutching her child, the elder who has seen generations rise and fall, the child who knows only fear. Risen for all of us, because he is risen, we are never abandoned, never lost. Do not despair. Lift your voices, lift your hearts. The victory of the tomb is greater than the victory of empires. When you see the enemy, when the walls shake, when the cannon fire echoes across the land, let your hearts cry out, Christ is risen! Truly, he is risen. Let the proclamation rise above fear. Outlast the siege. Endure even if Constantinople falls, for the victory of the resurrection is eternal. When you walk the walls tomorrow, when banners are lowered, and you hold the icon of Theotokos to your chest, remember, nothing, no enemy, no death, no darkness can touch the light of God that pierced the tomb. The light lives in you, in this city, in the world, stronger than any cannon, any army, any passing of time. Rise with Christ this Pascha. Sing with him in your hearts. His triumph is yours. When the world around you crumbles, remember, the tomb is empty, the stone rolled away, and the Lord of life reigns forever. Christ is risen. Truly, he is risen. The present day now. Now, my brothers and sisters, to those who hear these words, not as citizens of Constantinople, but centuries beyond its falls, what are we to make of this night? What are we to learn from the people who stood beneath the dome of the Hagia Sophia singing, Christ is risen, while the world they knew stood on the edge of collapse? History has already answered part of that question, but perhaps not in the way we imagine. The walls did not simply fail. Those great land walls, the might of centuries, the labor of emperors, the shield of the city, stood. What came against them, however, was unlike anything before. The great bombard was brought forward, that monstrous engine of bronze, hurling granite stones weighing 1,000 pounds or more. But it was not alone. Around it stood ranks of lesser cannons, dozens upon dozens, their iron mouths spitting fire without rest. Day and night they roared. The earth shook beneath their fury. The air itself seemed to tear with each blast. The moat was filled. Stone, timber, earth, until what had become a barrier became a road. Siege towers crept closer, ladders rose, men advanced in waves without end. When one line fell, another took its place. When one assault broke, another followed. They did not tire, they did not relent. Their numbers stretched beyond counting, 20-1 against the defenders, and still they came. At the center of all, that great cannon spoke again and again, its thunder rolling like some ancient and merciless. Its granite shot struck with such force that it seemed as if Satan himself hammered against the jeweled city of God, as if the full fury of hell had been unleashed upon those stones. Fire, iron, ash, relentless without mercy, without rest. For 53 days the city endured. 53 days of unceasing assault. For those within, it must have felt as though hell itself had arisen to claim them. Yet the walls still stood. Day after day they were battered. Night after night they were repaired. The stones were lifted back into place. Prayers rose with them, with each stone. Along those same walls, the icon of the Virgin, the Mother of God, was carried among the soldiers, not as a weapon, but as a witness, not as iron or bronze, but a reminder that their strength did not lie in stone alone. Men who faced cannon fire fell to their knees as she passed, crossing themselves, whispering in the prayers in the smoke-filled air. The walls held, but so did their faith. When sections of the outer defense broke, the inner line still rose, tall, unyielding, defiant. Even the great cannon faltered and broke before the city was fully taken. The city was not lost because its greatest strength failed. It was lost because of something smaller did, an unlocked door. A moment where vigilance slipped. When Giovanni Gustolini Longo, the city's finest defender, was struck down and carried from the walls, courage wavered, confusion spread, and though it had not been guarded, the enemy entered, not by breaking the strongest place, but by finding the smallest. Once inside, they did not come quietly. The Janissaries surged like a flood, seizing ground, climbing towers, cutting through resistance with terrifying speed. When the banner rose upon a tower, something broke. Not the stone, but the spirit. The sight spread like fire. What had held for centuries unraveled in moments, not because the walls failed, but because what was forcing entry now lived within. Even then, prayer did not cease. Even then, faith did not fully break. In those final moments, the emperor himself, Constantine XI Palaiologos, cast aside the purple of his office, removing every symbol of earthly rule, choosing instead to stand as a soldier among his men. He did not flee. He did not surrender. He did not yield. With sword in hand, he charged until the maelstrom of steel, fire, and death, last seen entering the press of battle, never to be seen again. One account remembers the haunting cry, "The city has fallen, but I still live." Even as the Roman Empire came to its end, 2,206 years since its founding, he did not lose faith. As everything around him collapsed, he did not falter. Though the last Roman emperor, he knew he served a king who would never fall, never falter, the giver of eternal life. Christ had already conquered death, and no earthly defeat could overturn that victory. Here, history speaks directly to us. Is this not how sin works? Does it not always come like the bombard, loud, obvious, and shaking foundations? We prepare for that. We guard against what we see. More often it comes quietly, like a sickness, through a small door left unattended, through places we believe harmless. Once inside, it does not remain small. It spreads, it takes hold, it infects the soul. It's working its way inward until what was strong begins to weaken from within. Yet here is the deeper mystery. The city fell through a small and unassuming door. But who else comes through the small and unassuming gate? Not with thunder, not with fire, not with conquest, but in humility, Christ himself. He came to Jerusalem, not as a conquering emperor, but as a servant king. As it is written, "Behold, your king is coming to you, humble and mounted on a donkey." He entered through the eastern gate, where no legions marched, where no triumphs were declared. The people cried, "Hosanna to the Son of David!" Not because he conquered by force, but because he came to save. How different from the western gates of cities, where Roman generals entered in triumph, armor gleaming, banners raised, treasures displayed and victory proclaimed, power, conquest, glory claimed by force. Christ chose another way, not by conquest, but sacrifice, not domination, but redemption, not by the sword, but the cross. We are left with a choice. Leave our doors of our lives unguarded, allowing sin to enter, spread, and claim what is not its own, or to open the same doors to Christ, who came not to destroy, but to heal. No gate can hold him. No wall, no door, no barrier of wood, iron, or stone can stand against the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. Yet he does not force entry. He waits, he calls, he asks. The walls were strong, but the door was open. The tomb was sealed, but the stone was rolled away. This is our lesson. Empires rise and fall. Cities are built and taken. Even the strongest works of human hands, like the Theodosian walls, will one day crumble into dust. The resurrection is not undone by any of this. The night beneath the great dome, the people proclaim a truth greater than walls, empire, or history itself. Christ has already won. That victory does not depend on whether a city stands or falls. What do we learn? Guard the doors. Watch the quiet places, the hidden ones, where sin does not shout but seeps and infects. Remember this also, even when we fail, Christ does not. When something breaks, Christ remains unbroken. When history turns, Christ is unchanged. The lesson of that final Easter is not defeat, but truth laid bare. It is both weakness and hope. Weakness that we are not as secure as we think, and hope that our salvation was never in the walls. It was in the empty tomb. So I leave you with this. Somewhere on those walls stood a craftsman, a man of wood and iron, who strengthened what he could, stood beneath the icon as it passed, faced the fire of the enemy and trembling earth, and still lifted his voice, Christ is risen. Long before him stood another craftsman, Christ himself, a carpenter who shaped with wood with care, built with purpose, understood what it was and what it meant to make something endure. The craftsman built for time, Christ built for eternity. The craftsman strengthened walls, Christ rebuilt souls. The craftsman labored with hands, Christ redeemed through sacrifice. The craftsman built to endure, Christ built to save. The craftsman strengthened what could stand for 1,000 years. Christ conquered death for all time. Build well, guard your doors. When you hear him knock, do not delay. The walls may stand and the city still fall, but the tomb was sealed and did not hold. As it was written, O death, where is your victory? O death, where is your sting? Christ is risen, and nothing in heaven, on earth, or under the earth will ever overcome him. He is not here. He is risen. Amen.